So I think we'll just get questions for Dr. Kate whenever, during the panel, when we get questions from everyone else. You know, to be in the cow business, you have to be an eternal optimist. We've had 2 presentations of bad news. Well, let's talk about some good news. I live in the middle of where the Dust Bowl happened. And a few years back, we had the driest year in 125 years. We didn't blow away. One of them old timers told me, said, yeah, you didn't blow away, but you got trucks to haul some of them cows out of there. You got trucks to bring some feed in. You have a lot of things at your disposal that we didn't have, management tech. So the next panel is going to talk about a little bit of what they're doing to face the drier conditions that we see in New Mexico. New Mexico's always been dry. Looks like it's going to be drier. So if you guys will come up, the ones of you that's on the panel, we'll talk a little bit about what you're doing, and we'll have Dr. Kate come up here, and she's already presented. I'm not sure where she went to, but oh, there you are. And you can take, when we get questions from the panel, we'll include Dr. Kate, any questions you have for her. So if y'all just take a couple of minutes, tell us who you are, what you do, and how you are personally coping with the drought. Aaron, start with you.
Okay, I'll start us off here. As I mentioned earlier, my name is Aaron Bollock. I work for the Pecos Valley Artesian Conservancy District. Other than self-medicating, I'd like to talk about some of the things that we've been doing. As I mentioned, we are in a real unique situation over there because of our artesian aquifer. So the district has always got an eye on what we can do to encourage that natural inflow to our system. And I think a lot of that is applicable in other areas, and as we go on, I'll go into that a little deeper. But that, for us, that's obvious. That's a no-brainer. We need to encourage that natural infiltration that takes place and keeps our aquifer healthy the way it is.
My name is Joe Culbertson, and a ranch over in Harding County with my family, and my wife and I, and my sister and brother-in-law, and my daughter Amanda is the ranch foreman. And we've been there for a lot of years, and seen some droughts, but according to all the predictions, it's going to get worse. So we hope we can get through it.
What practices have you implemented, Joe, there on the ranch to deal with drought?
Well, I don't know if it's not working. Oh, the microphone's not working. Okay, I thought. Well, we sent some pictures in. I don't know whether they're available or not on the PowerPoint. But anyway, if it is, she'll have them up there in a minute. But we're looking right now, and we've had Kate come and help us. And right now we're trying to. Some of our wells have gone down, and not the aquifer, or the water levels decreased. We had the American Water Survey Company come in and do some seismograph work. It indicated where we might find some more water, better wells, and so they did, and he kept telling me that, well, this is not very good. And I said, what do you mean? How much are you talking about? He said, oh, about 8 gallons a minute. And I said, wow, okay, let's have it. So anyway, if we marked about 4 or 5 places that if we can get a well driller in there, we're going to drill about 4 or 5 wells to increase our water supply. Now, we haul a lot of water this last year, because some of the wells were weaker, and of course, cattle in the summertime, they like to drink a lot of water, don't they? And anyway, so we do some of that. And we had our year, we had an exceptionally good year. But we only had about a little over 9 inches of rain, but it came from mid-July through mid-August. And we maxed out. That's as tall as the grass has ever been. That's as many weeds as there's ever been. And but it didn't collect any water in the creeks. We have several conservation dams up on the ranch, and they didn't collect much water during that time, but it was good grass rains. So that's what everybody hopes to have when you end. But you want me to go on? Or whatever. Okay. Well, anyway, years ago, back in 2010-11, we had a pretty severe drought, and we had to sell a few cows, but we were down on numbers anyway, so that helped out. But we went through 2 years on the same grass because we didn't have fully stocked, and that helped a lot. So I think not overgrazing is a very good thing to do, especially when you know that drought's coming along. So you want to watch your stocking rate, I believe, and so. But we were able to go through all one summer, that winter, and the next summer, and on the same grass. But that was rare because we'd had a good year just before that. That doesn't always happen. Now, I think that I think you just have to watch your stocking rate real close, and with the drought being predicted and everything. Now, I remember years ago, I used to go to water law conferences, and they always had a climatologist come there and talk to all the lawyers, the handful of us that weren't lawyers, and telling us about drought cycles. And none of them I can remember each year. Very few of them talked about man-caused droughts. They weren't aiming at that, but they did use the tree ring data, and a lot of data to show some of the most severe droughts back through the years. And back in somewhere around 1200 to 1400 is when the Anasazi Indians left the Four Corners, and it's because of a drought. And some of them were thinking that we might be starting into a long-term mega drought, and they were starting it in about around early 80s. And everybody's got a different opinion about really where that started. I think you said, Dr. Phillips, 75 is kind of a start. Okay. Anyway, so that's pretty close, but I hope we don't get into that long-term drought like that. That's terrible. But we do have ways to deal with it a little bit better than they did, of course. But you need to do some drought planning, like how many cattle you're running, what you're going to do if it does turn out really dry and you don't have any grass for that summer. The next summer you need to know which cows are going to go first. Y'all know all this stuff. I mean, I'm not telling you anything new. The stuff that I know that would probably benefit you the most is classified. So,
okay. Thank you, Joe. And you wouldn't want to shoot us all if we disclosed it. I'm Tom Paterson with my wife, Callie. Callie, raise your hand. And our 2 adult daughters. We have the Spur Ranch Cattle Company. We're down in Catron County in New Mexico, and also in Greenlee and Apache counties in Arizona. Next. And this is where we are. If you drew a box from Albuquerque to El Paso to Tucson up to Flagstaff, we're in the middle of that. It's otherwise known as nowhere. That's where the ranch is. We're right on the state line. Next. And so the North Ranch headquarters, more of the summer range, is located from Luna to Alpine, and the South Ranch headquarters, or ranch, is west of Alma, about 6 miles. So we're in, I think, what Dr. Phillips called the high mountains in his presentation this morning. Next. This gives me some pause, because this is what I don't want to see happen to us, where ranchers are getting fined for pumping water to livestock or for using, I had the state engineer come after me because we were moving water from the San Francisco River to a drinker in the same pasture. But he said, you are not authorized to take it out of the river and put it in your drinker. I think we're going to get more and more scrutiny. When we were doing some projects on our creek, we had the state of Arizona flying it because they wanted to make sure we weren't interrupting their access to that water. So I think that the livestock industry, agriculture industry, is going to be under increasing scrutiny in the years to come. Next. These are the water management strategies we've used on our private land as well as on our Forest Service grazing allotments. We've built tanks, we've cleaned tanks, we repair tanks. We have built exclosures around our springs to keep the elk out of them, to protect those springs so they keep producing water. Under irrigation, obviously you irrigate, but what I really want to focus on here is a recommendation. If your paperwork isn't in absolutely perfect order, get it there. Because folks are going to be looking for any way to take your water away from you. So, we have focused a lot on making sure that our water rights are properly documented. There's a special use permit. It took 4 or 5 years to get it out of the Forest Service because our diversion structure is on forest. That's all papered now. Cost me $90 a year. As well as make sure that the infrastructure is in place. You're not having to go and deal with disasters. And this year, I'll show you a picture of it. This year we did a new head of the ditch diversion structure, and we keep our ditches, our irrigation ditches in repair. We put in gates, we put in takeout gates, and I'll show you some pictures. I'm a firm believer that I want to see grass, not weeds, I want to see grass on every square inch. Because if I got grass on the ground, then it's going to hold the water bed better than bare dirt. Bare dirt's just going to flash off. So we fertilize and we seed. We have worked, and I'll show you some pictures here, on riparian restoration, sediment retention structures. We've done ephemeral gullies, erosion control structures to try to keep the water in the earth as opposed to draining it all out. We have about 100 acres of woods on our North Ranch headquarters. We have thinned those woods, we've piled and burned them, and we broadcast burned that. We're getting ready to do another burn this coming year. It got stopped from this year because no one seemed to want to do burns down in that part of the country after Calf Canyon and Hermit's Peak. And we have a datal alluvial soil, which is a volcanic soil, and it gets hard packed really fast. So one of the things every about 4 years I go through with the tractor and rippers, and I rip anything that's semi-flat because I want the water to go in the ground as opposed to flash off to the creek. On our grazing allotments, we're somewhat more limited because we got to comply with all the rules. And whatever we do on a grazing allotment takes a lot of time. These are Forest Service grazing allotments. But we clean, we repair our tanks. It's hard to get a tank built anymore on a Forest Service grazing allotment. We protect our springs. We actually drilled 2 wells on Forest Service grazing allotment within the last couple of years, and that was astonishing. It took years to get the authority to do it, but we drilled 2 wells, developed catchment basins, develop and maintain pipeline distribution systems, solar pumps and boosters with electrical optionality. Some are buried, some are not, of our pipelines. We put in storage tanks, we put in drinkers, and we have urged, like the Dickens, the Forest Service to get out there and thin and burn. Because when you have 2 feet of duff, forest trash on the ground, you're getting no water down into the ground. The other thing we do is I sign up for FSA drought insurance, and we have private drought insurance as well, and that's how we are managing there. Next. So these are some pictures. That's the technology we had when I was about 14 for dealing with erosion. I spent my childhood in the creek hauling rocks. And those rocks would do a great job. The creek would hold back some sediment, it would broaden out, and then we get a flood and it'd all be wiped away, time after time after time. I knew there was a better way to do it. And this is an example of what we have to face on our Centerfire Creek, where we started in '98. We did a structure in 2000. We added it in 2002. And the picture on the right is in 2022. This is the structure. This is what, next one. This is where we put it in. Vertically incised walls, water draining out into the creek. Whenever the water would come down, it would just come gushing down, and we got no benefit from it other than it taking away more and more sediment. Next. We put this in. That is the largest private erosion structure in southwestern New Mexico. And in connection with that, we did the Spur Ranch project, which was which was the authority that Congress gave back in the early 90s, so that if you did a project on your private land and you created habitat for T&E species, the government couldn't come and kick you off the use you're making of your private land. So I'm now in year 22 of 30 for my safe harbor agreement. But the objective with this structure was to raise the creek level to an historic level, 14.5 feet. This is the bottom of the last of 3 structures. The upper 2 have added a whole lot more sediment so far. This one's probably about 4 feet from being full. Full meaning full of sediment, which is making a meadow, which is slowing down the water, which is creating habitat for critters, and those vertically incised walls, we're losing them. Next. But man, is it ever a pain to do this stuff. This is one part of the list of the participants in that little project back in 1998 and 2000. Next. That's everyone who had to get involved in it. And it's expensive. This was 1998 and 2003 dollars. Now, we didn't put all that money into it. If there's someone who could give us money for these projects, we're out there with our hand out to get money for it. But we still had to put some in ourselves. Next. After that, about 7 years later, 5 or 6 years later, we started a project on a ranch north, just a little bit north, about half a mile north of that one. And this is again Centerfire Creek, vertically incised walls, just sheer walls, nothing growing on them. Water would just gush through. And so we added the structure in the middle, and that's what that structure looks like today during a flood. Next. And that's what it looks like this summer when it had backed up from a flood. It's slowing the water down. This is what Kate was talking about. It was slowing the water down. It was spreading it out so it loses its force. Next. And this is this fall when it had dried out, because as she said, you can't impound water for more than 96 hours in the state of New Mexico. So we are not impounding water. We have raised this part of the creek 10.5 feet. Next. We went upstream from there, we put in the third structure, and this is the one that filled up the fastest. And it filled up the first year. Do you see the water level is now towards the base of the cottonwood trees? That's an historic level. We've returned the creek to where it was a century ago. We have vegetation growing, we have insects, unfortunately, we got a lot of elk too. But it has restored the creek. And we did it kind of in a different way. We put our spillway in the creek. So these are soil retention structures, sediment retention structures, where the spillway is in the creek. You put the spillway you build a dam, you put the spillway off to one side, you might end up with just another gully. So we did it this way. And that's soil cement. Next. Lots of people involved. Army Corps of Engineers was a pain. The lady would not give us our permit. Fortunately, then Senator Udall's family is from Luna, New Mexico, and he had an interest in getting this thing done. And believe it or not, that lady got what's called a disciplinary promotion to Fairbanks, Alaska. And we got a new guy from the Army Corps of Engineers in there, and I got my permits next month. And that's what it cost. And that's what it cost. This is in about 2011. And darling, it was worth every penny. Next. But those are very expensive projects. And really, let's go back to that one. And the reason I'm raising it is directed at you, Aaron. I want to see the task force recommend to the governor and the legislature, Jack, that we hire at least 3 individuals who will go out and work with us ranchers to identify where can we make a difference on our private land, on the landscape, riparian areas on the landscape. Identify where we can make a significant impact. We're impacting an entire watershed because we're at the bottom of the watershed. It's 83,000 acres. Where can you make a significant impact? Where can you hold the water back so it's not just gushing down the creek in our situation to Arizona? How do you navigate through the regulatory mess? Because between the first structure and the last 2 structures, it became a whole lot more complicated. I can't do it. I got a BS, an MS, a PhD, and a law degree, and I've done complex commercial litigation for 38 years. I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. We need people who are trained to do that, who will work with with ranchers who control the riparian areas because that's where people homesteaded back when, and who can help us raise the money from any number of sources. If we do that, then we're making a difference in the riparian areas in New Mexico. That's my recommendation to the task force and to the legislature. Next one, I'll move on. That's the diversion structure, 17 feet across, 9 feet tall, foot thick, and it's on 6 feet of bedrock. I don't want to lose my ditch and go into a non-use situation. Next. Like I said, we seed, we fertilize. I don't want to see any bare dirt. This is irrigated pasture. Next. We get forest fires. I can only imagine what the effects of the Black Fire and the Hermit's Peak Fire are going to have. This is after a forest fire on the state line with Arizona. This is forest trash. This is ash that the Forest Service doesn't clean this out. We're the ones cleaning it out. And we got stuck and we had to hire a loader to pull us out. Next. And we're the ones, it's the ranchers who are the ones putting in pipelines. Forest Service isn't out there. There's no Forest Service guy there. It's the ranchers who are putting this with Forest Service permission, but we're the ones putting in the pipelines so that we can put water throughout our pastures, which frankly the elk are using. Next one. We're the ones putting in the storage tanks. And we're the next one. And we're the ones putting in the tire drinkers. Next. Because folks, the bottom line is all the plans in the world put on the shelf don't matter one whit. What matters is getting out there and executing on it. Because in New Mexico, that grass doesn't just happen. We got to work for it. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's lunchtime, so keep your questions short, to the point, and your answers the same. Say them loud.
On that list of people that were paying, I didn't see New Mexico Game and Fish contributing.
That was not a setup. Arizona will. I just got $12,000 from Arizona to put in a pipeline project. If I get back to the hotel early enough today, I'm going to put a pretty major order in for about 8 miles of pipeline. Can't get New Mexico to do squat. Arizona will do it, but not New Mexico.
Yes, sir.
Let me see if I got, I got it working. My grandmother was a Murphy, so Murphy's Law usually attends me, so you may not want me on your ranches. So the way that our projects are structured briefly is if you're in any of the soil and water conservation districts that we already have a groundwater monitoring project for, that is funded by the soil and water conservation districts so that the majority of the cost is free to the landowner. The only thing a landowner might have to pay for is if you wanted additional chemistry or tritium isotope data for your wells. In some years, if we have funding for that, you don't have to pay for it, but in some years we don't. We have to juggle our funding around a little bit. Jim already knows the heartburn that we fight with that. If you are not in a soil and water district that we're already partnered with, we will come out and build a project for you. We're just now starting a project outside of Santa Rosa for a landowner to help evaluate new potential places to look for water. So if you're in, you can, so let me real quick try to run through Northeastern, which is Union County, Colfax County, Mora Wagon Mound, Ute Creek and Mesa, which is Harding County, Southwest Quay, and if we've got anybody who's snuck over the border from Colorado, we also work in Spanish Peaks, Purgatory River, and Branson Trinchera, soil and water conservation districts. And I will be around for the rest of the day too, if anybody wants to visit.
I'm interested to know what, if anything, you, either Joe or Tom, have changed on your ranches with regard to grazing management practices and layouts of water systems as we get further along in our drought.
Yeah. We put in a lot more pipelines, solar wells and pipelines and storage to get water to the parts of the ranch that are short on water. And grazing, we used to run up to around 1,400 mother cows on that ranch. We run 11 to 1,200 now, and that's really made a big difference. We rotate, so that's the reason why back in 2010-11, when it got so dry, we were able to go through 2 winters and a summer and a half. And so I think that was a good idea to do that. And we just cut back a lot from what we used to run. That's probably the biggest thing on the grazing, and then the pipelines.
We do the same thing Joe talked about, but we're going to have our next module after lunch is on forage, strategies to deal with drought. Cliff Copeland is going to moderate that session. It's going to be good. Tom Sidwell is one of our panelists. Greg Alpers is talking about brush control. Please make sure you're back here in time for it, because I think that'll answer the rest of your question on forage management.
Anybody else? Hungry, huh?
Jack, if I could say one more thing before we break up here. The Interstate Stream Commission did not do a project over in the Gila that ended up giving a considerable amount of water to the state of Arizona for their New Mexico's unwillingness to act. And it occurs to me that one of the primary failures there was not being able to speak the language. And as we're talking about these projects you can do on your own place, don't put in a livestock water. Put in a livestock and wildlife water. Don't put in a dirt tank for use as livestock water. Put it in for waterfowl resting and livestock water. Learn to speak the language. And a lot of times, I know on that particular project, the perception became the reality, and that's why that project was stopped. It had nothing to do with what was actually going to be done, but the perception was what killed the project. And if you can incorporate some of the lingo into your projects, you'll have a whole lot greater buy-in from the agencies that need to be participating to make it feasible.
14,000 acre feet lost to Arizona.
What happened this fall is that we had a 1,000-year event in the Mogollon Mountains that went down the Gila and has absolutely destroyed the entire irrigation infrastructure in the Verdon Valley. That's why we need to take this seriously. Another reason.
Any more questions? What an awesome turnout. It's good to look out there and see a bunch of cowboys and not so many politicians. Thank you all for coming, and we'll go get some lunch.